Morning. I'm Ed Bolian from VINwiki, spelled with a V. And I'm like everybody else here. I'm here because Rob Rabbit Pitts changed my life. When I got a call 7 years ago from a South Carolina radio host that had actually watched one of my YouTube videos, it blew my mind because we had just started making stuff, and the whole thought was that maybe these YouTube videos would just turn into a way to promote this app that we had started to try to track the history of cars. But Rob was really fond of a story that I had told about purchasing a Lamborghini from, we'll say, a woman of ill repute. And the way that I had described some of her features that Rob would call aftermarket parts. And I had said that she could take a break while hula hooping. And he felt like that was the best joke he'd ever heard, which was a flattering lie, because I've heard his stuff and it's way better than anything I ever thought of. But Rob changed VINwiki. He didn't just validate that stories were our way to capture these cars, but more significantly, these people, and share them with the world. He upped the game. And since the first time that he returned the favor after I appeared on his radio show and I said, hey, could you come tell some of your car stories on YouTube for us? Every other person that's come through my doors and sat down in that same chair has said they wanted to sound like Rabbit. And I'm sorry, they can't, and they haven't, and we'll still keep trying. But it also changed Rob as he changed VINwiki. He was always clear of what the goal was, and it's right here. He admired so much all of the automotive personalities of television over the last couple of decades, and the end game was to have a television show to become the automotive personality that he always dreamt of. And to watch him use every opportunity so strategically, so intelligently, and so specifically to get there, and then to do it, was the most fulfilling thing for me, like all of you, to watch from the sidelines cheering him on. And you'll hear a ton throughout this week of Rob's storytelling abilities because they were legendary. And Rob taught us that with his clever one-liners and all the witty things and all the things that he did. But Rob was really not on purpose teaching us about something else, and that is the definition of forever. Rob's videos, he's told, 5, 6 dozen stories on VINwiki over the last 7 years, have amassed between Facebook and YouTube more than 200 million views. After this week, maybe 250. And like a lot of you, this week I went back and I started rewatching them just so I could feel connected to them again. And I love that I can do that as long as I want to. And who knows, maybe those 200 million views are just Mark Spence watching them 198 million times and the rest of us getting it once or twice, but I think it's probably a little more spread out. But the coolest thing about that is that tomorrow, after he's in the ground, there's still going to be somebody who gets to hear Rabbit's honey over gravel voice for the very first time, and he'll change their life. And the day after that, somebody else. And that is what forever really means. In the tribute that John Ficara offered on VINwiki this week, he said that the profession of being a storyteller was really the cheat code to immortality. And Rob did that. What Rob didn't know that he was teaching us about forever is what we felt this week. When Rob went into hospice a week ago yesterday, I got in my car and I started driving north, and I had 2.5 hours to think about the 6 months that me and Travis and Rob have spent, along with all the family, all the friends that knew, just dealing with what this moment was going to feel like. And Rob and I had shared a lot of spiritual conversations. He was very fond of saying that he'd done enough in his life that it would make me defecate a hymn book, when I would say it that way from this pulpit. And he was always proud to wear that VINwiki shirt, which you'd imagine he and Travis had made without exactly telling me it was going to happen. But we talked a lot about spirituality, and usually Rob would just use a joke like that to deflect it. But as I drove north that last time, I said, it's time. And as I got to the hospice center, they'd finally gotten the right cocktail and medications to get Rob comfortable. And it was a huge weight off of all of us. So we talked for a few minutes, and they really kicked in. And he slept for a couple hours, and me and Miss Kim talked. And I'll tell you, the whole time that since the phone call where Rob told me in February, I'm all like, well, what do we do for legacy curation? Do you want us to get together and workshop your 10 best stories and build a Netflix comedy special? Do you want me to get a ghostwriter to put your memoir together? Like, what do you want? And he was so content. He was so happy with the body of work, the stories, the persona that existed, because it was so accurate and exactly what he wanted it to be, that he didn't have any remaining desire to clarify any of that. He was happy with what we saw and what would be out there forever. And for all of us that are checking our phones and thinking about what we're going to do next and thinking about what we've got to get done, imagine having that kind of peace where you can let it go and just relax. And that was a very, very special and superhuman thing to watch. But a couple hours later, after the meds wore off, Rob woke up, we started talking, he started joking. And I asked him if I could pray for him. And I held his hand as firmly as he could. And we prayed through the nature of salvation through Jesus. The fact that, as Romans 3:23 says, that we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Didn't take long to convince Rob of that. We got a lot of evidence of it, but that's okay. They made for really, really, really good stories. And we learned in 6:23 that the wages of that sin is death, meaning separation from God for eternity. And fortunately, the next word is but. But God gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall have everlasting life. That we can't fix it ourselves, but that Jesus, God's Son, came down to live a life fully God and fully man, and died the death that we deserved on that cross, and rose on the third day to conquer not only his death, but all of our death for the sin and the death that we deserve. And that if we believe in that, and we confess with our mouth and believe in our heart, that we shall be saved. And I said, amen. And I said, Rob, you believe that? He said, I do. And I said, Rob, you know what that means on the other side of all this pain? He said, yes, I do. And to be honest with you, it's almost exciting. And I know how bad I've needed to hear that for so many years. I know how bad we've all want to hear it. And God was working in Rob's life forever, since everybody knew him, since you taught him everything. But Rob got to see the end coming from miles and miles away. And he had time to get his heart right with God. And I'm so thankful for everybody that made him think like that, pray like that, ponder what he'd learned, what he'd read, what he understood, and the love that he had felt from all the people in his life. But we don't all have that amount of time. There's a lot of Mustangs in that parking lot, and a lot of telephone poles between here and wherever you're going. So, take the time to get right with God. Believe what Rob believes. And I know that it is not the right reason to want to go to heaven because it's our last chance to hear Rob's stories in person. But like most of you, I'm awful glad that it got added to the travel brochure this week. I love you, man.